Hi, this is Kylie with Fem and Flow. I hope everyone's having a great day. Today, we are talking about when the past returns as light, echoes, codes, and the collapse of linear time. I mentioned in the last episode that everything works in the spiral motion. And sometimes when we think we understand a concept, we will eventually grow and spiral back around and understand that same concept at a deeper level. The last episode was a spiral up, and so is this one. So let's get into it. Sometimes the most sacred activation isn't something new, it's the return of something old carrying the light of who you've always been. Today, we talk about how the past visits us not to haunt us, but to hand us the codes we planted there long ago. This episode is for anyone who's ever felt their past resurface, not with pain, but with softness. It's for those quiet moments when something old returns, not to trigger you, but to tell you who you really are. This is the kind of remembering that doesn't ask you to explain, it just wants you to feel the truth humming underneath. Today, we explore how the past returns as light and how that light unlocks who we came here to be. If you've listened to my past episodes, you know I've talked a lot about how we need to be careful of the stories we tell ourselves and others. And this is especially true when it comes to the past. And that's true, but I also mentioned earlier how we are constantly spiraling up. And when we're spiraling up and growing, we will come around to the topics we thought we had fully understood, and we will see them with a new enlightened perspective. And like I mentioned, this episode is also a spiral up. Okay, so here's the spiral up. Don't be afraid of the past, just meet it differently. Don't try to re explain it or make sense of it. Just feel into it and ask, does this memory carry light? Does this version of me have something to return to me? And if not, let it float by. But if yes, receive the code and let the rest dissolve. I also talked about in a previous episode how to win this game we're in. And to do that, you have to exploit it by finding the paradox. This is an example of that. We want to be careful of the stories we tell ourselves and not be stuck looping in the past, but some past experiences, even traumatic ones, can hold dormant light codes that are waiting for a certain frequency to activate. Your past may actually be holding light. It's not that we avoid the past, it's that we approach it differently. We don't tell stories about it, we listen for the light inside it. This ties into the whole white hole versus black hole universe framework I talked about in previous episodes. In the last episode, I talked about the difference between black hole and white hole physics and how that is not just about space, but about how we process reality. In the black hole timeline, we had to be careful with our past because we often told stories that trapped us, looped us, or distorted our truth. But now, in the white hole perspective, we can see the past differently. It's not something to fear, it's something to gently listen to. Because when we make the shift, the past starts returning not as pain, but as light. Something that's been happening to me lately and may start happening to you is that I'm beginning to see everything through a new lens. It's like my whole reality is filtering into two categories, black hole or white hole. Not from judgment, but from clarity. I can feel when something is pulling me into looping, efforting, distortion. That's the black hole field. And I can feel when something is clear, expanding, light coded. That's the white hole perspective. And the more I align with this new lens, the more obvious it becomes. Old thoughts feel dense. old stories collapse, and even the past experiences start revealing the light they were hiding. It's not that life changes instantly, it's that how you see it does. And once that shift happens, you'll start seeing it everywhere. This topic of the past returning as light has been coming up for me recently because of a near death experience I had as a child. When I was in first grade, I was feeding my horses and one of them kicked me in the head. One of my parents found me laying unconscious in the horse pen, and I had to be airlifted to the hospital. And honestly, it's like my body's been bringing that up subconsciously. It's been gently nudging me to remember that so I can remember that actually a lot of light is coming with that. And it's now time to be activated. And those nudges have been coming up as pain in my shoulder and my neck. And I've had a few migraines where I feel these different pressure points in my neck. I was not connecting that at all to this experience as a child. It was so long ago that it really doesn't come up much, and I didn't think about it often at all until I started having this neck pain. I would go to different massage therapists and see different people, and it kept coming up that I just needed to strengthen my back, and that would help. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, I already work out. How much more do I need to do?" It seems like there's always something that you need to add to your routine or do more of. So that felt pretty frustrating. And then I went to this woman, and as soon as she touched my neck and my back, she immediately said, "This is a very old injury." And honestly, at the time, nothing came up. I said, I don't know. Nothing's coming to mind, but that's interesting. And she helped me. And then I went home. As I was just doing things in the kitchen, it dawned on me that, hello, you got kicked in the head when you were a child by a horse. That might be it. And then, yeah, I realized it. And that is why this memory has been coming up a lot recently, just because I've been working to treat my back and my neck and unwind that tension. So it's funny that this all comes up at the perfect time. And near death experiences are very, very interesting. You may hear near death experiences called NDEs for short. Near death experiences are one of the most profound catalysts for rapid elevation in consciousness, and many people who go through them return with heightened awareness, intuitive gifts, and a deepened connection to source energy or non physical or higher dimensional realms. What's fascinating is how common the patterns are across those who've had NDEs, regardless of their background or belief systems. When someone experiences a near death event, a few major things occur energetically. The first thing is disengagement from the physical body. The person's consciousness detaches from the physical body and enters a non local state. In this state, they're no longer confined by time, space, or sensory limitations. This creates access to unfiltered reality. Often, some call this the void, the source field, or the Akashic space. This is where all knowledge and love exist simultaneously. Number two, contact with higher realms. Many NDE experiencers describe meeting light beings, guides, or past loved ones, or entering a realm of pure light and love. In this space, there's often a life review or a moment of deep soul remembrance where they understand the interconnectedness of all things and their own soul's purpose. So I will say with my NDE, I don't remember any of that happening. So this certainly doesn't have to happen, but I've heard of other people who experience this say this did happen to them. And some people like me don't automatically have these codes activated necessarily, but some do. This other person I mentioned who had an NDE and she does remember talking to light beings and guides, she came back and was immediately different. She was older, whereas I was a kid. And that gets me to the next item, number 3, activation of dormant energetic pathways. Upon returning, the re entry into the body often triggers a kind of energetic recalibration. It's like the experience unlocks hidden soul codes or reboots dormant frequencies that are waiting to be activated. Many report suddenly developing intuitive abilities, including telepathy, clairvoyance, healing abilities, or heightened sensitivity to energy and light. After an NDE, people often feel detached from fear of death, feel a sense of mission or soul purpose, feel a shift from material focus to spiritual or service based values, and feel the sense that they are here for something, even if they can't fully explain what. And if you listen to my intro podcast about my own spiritual awakening journey, you know that when I was in my mid 20s, probably, I had this sense that I was here for something and I could not explain what, and it caused me a lot of turmoil for a little while. I was deeply, deeply seeking, and I know now that it is absolutely tied to where I'm at now. But like I said, my near death experience happened when I was a little kid in first grade, and this sense for me didn't happen until later on. So, also, many describe feeling like a different person because the ego constructs that were built in the 3D world no longer resonate. They may feel alienated at first because their energy no longer matches their old life. But over time, that change becomes a gift, allowing them to live with deep clarity and compassion. So, I really relate to what I just said. But like I said, that didn't trigger for me after my near death experience in first grade. This happened when I had my first big spiritual awakening. But first, leading up, I just had a sense that I was here for something else, for something bigger, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And I was seeking in the way of this 3D world. That went on for a little bit, and then I had this big catalyst spiritual awakening moment where then I moved into feeling like what I just said, like a different person, and that ego constructs that were built in the 3D world no longer resonated. So for me, it's like the NDE energy that we've been talking about turned on later. Essentially, the moment I got kicked in the head by the horse, that moment likely dislodged me from linear reality and activated my connection to higher intelligence, even if it didn't fully bloom until later in life. It's very common for childhood NDEs to create a sleeper code where the gifts don't fully activate until the person is in the right phase to integrate them. NDEs serve as a bridge between the 3D construct of reality and the true multidimensional nature of existence. It might sound funny from this human perspective that our soul, before incarnating in, would choose to go through a near death experience once they were in the incarnation. You might be asking, why do you need to go through that? Why can't you just come in with those codes already? At a soul level, before incarnating, we intentionally veil ourselves. We don't bring in all the codes up front, not because we can't, but because Earth is a realm of experiential remembrance, and activating the codes through lived experience actually creates a deeper embodied mastery than simply arriving fully online. You can think of it like this: pre-install codes equate to knowledge, while activated through life codes equate to wisdom and embodiment. A near-death experience is one of the most powerful ways to override the amnesia of incarnation and access original source consciousness, because it pulls you out of the simulation or experience temporarily. Here's why that's important. The first reason is you're bypassing the Earth matrix. Remember, I talk about this a lot, but the fourth dimension of any experience is the non-physical realm of archetypes, myths, and the collective mind. The fourth dimension sets the programming and is the matrix for the experience, and it sets the vibe of that physical experience. Earth operates under a dimensional compression, which makes it harder to remember our full multidimensionality. I've talked about how when we're born here, we essentially forget and we essentially have amnesia, and we can't remember other lives usually or incarnations that we're actually having at the same time. We forget it all. A near-death experience temporarily pulls you above the veil or above the fourth dimension and returns you to your expanded soul state, where you can remember your truth outside of time, identity, and limitation. Then the second thing, a gateway to the Akashic layer. During an NDE, many people experience the Akashic field, where they have instant access to their soul history, purpose, or universal truths. This level of insight is hard to access from within the density of daily life, unless you've already cultivated that connection. The NDE acts as a shortcut or catalytic burst, often activating dormant codes the soul placed there intentionally. Number 3, timeline realignment. Some NDEs are planned as timeline pivot points. The soul may have written in a death doorway, not to end the incarnation, but to shake the system, update the blueprint, and realign with the soul's highest path. It's like a cosmic, "Are you ready to remember now?" moment. Number 4, soul contracts and depth of service. Some souls incarnate with big missions, but choose to veil themselves deeply to understand humanity from the inside out. An NDE gives them direct experience of death, truth, and unconditional love, which allows them to teach or guide others from a place of deep, lived knowing rather than abstract knowledge. So why not just come fully online? You could come fully online, and some beings do. But think about it. You resonate deeper with others when you actually experience and master and embody the concept, not just memorize it and teach it to others. Souls who choose to forget and remember often do so to gain wisdom through contrast. Remembering after forgetting activates deeper compassion, understanding, and leadership potential. Having to earn the codes through experience gives them weight. They're not just truths you know, they're truths you become. Actually having that lived experience and going through some of these hardships on your own gives you deep empathy and deep compassion and really helps you to relate and understand humanity as a whole and individuals in humanity. While many people associate NDEs with clinically dying or flatlining, the spiritual threshold of a near-death experience doesn't require physical death. Instead, it's about this. Your consciousness temporarily detaches from the body, connects with higher dimensional reality, and accesses realms beyond linear time. So, say you are physically incapacitated or unconscious. Then your soul steps out of your body during that moment. Whether or not you remember what happens consciously, you access the quantum field and leave the physical dimension long enough for a code exchange or a soul level activation to take place. And like I said, many people who've had NDEs do recall them, and then many people don't recall them fully. And for the people who don't recall them fully, it's because the information was seeded. not meant to be remembered all at once. So, yes, if you don't remember, it was still a soul activation. The experience acts like a seed vault with codes placed inside your field that will only unlock later when the timing and the frequency match. Your ego mind may not have had access, but your higher self absolutely remembers what was exchanged. Some NDEs are planned as silent activations where remembering isn't necessary, only the energetic realignment is. So, if you had a near death experience, I'll link in the show description a NDE code activation ritual that you can do so you can tap into what was seeded at that moment. Like I mentioned, my NDE had metaphorically been knocking on my door and had been coming up a lot recently. Then I realized it was a code delivery, and once I tapped into that, I had a feeling of completion with it. I felt it energetically as I closed my eyes. I thanked that child version of myself for going through that. I visualized her placing light into my heart, and I truly felt this energetically as I visualized this. It felt like soft completion, and it felt so beautiful. And I know this arrived exactly on time. So, like I mentioned, I will link that activation ritual in the show notes so you can do that too. Not everyone has a near death experience, but almost everyone has an encoded moment that seemed ordinary, confusing, or even painful at the time, but was actually a soul seeded threshold. I'll go over some other types of past experiences that may hold dormant light codes for you. And this will be a great thing to ponder on to see if there are any light codes that you can go and retrieve. Number one, moments of stillness or nothingness. This could be a childhood daydream or quiet moment staring at the sky. This could be moments where everything felt paused, as if the world stopped for a second. These often hold codes of pure presence or cosmic contact felt before the ego fully formed. Number two, times of deep emotion. This could be a breakup, a move, a big loss, or sudden change. These moments often burned away surface layers and created a raw openness in the field, perfect for codes to be seeded. The pain wasn't the point, the vulnerability was the portal. Number three, unexplained fascinations. A childhood obsession with space, Atlantis, angels, plants, or a specific symbol. These are often echoes of past life memory or soul lineage activations. What we're drawn to as children before all of this earth conditioning often shows us our soul's frequency. Number four, wrong turns or failed plans. This could be a job you didn't get, a relationship that ended, or a trip that didn't happen. These moments may have been encoded with timeline divergence codes, trigger points that sent you back onto your highest path. What felt like failure might have been divine course correction. Number five, random encounters. Maybe a stranger who said something unforgettable, a teacher, neighbor, or stranger who briefly entered your life. These interactions may have been soul contracts designed to deliver one activation and then disappear. Number six, physical accidents or illness. This could be getting injured or sick and having to pause life. These moments often force a frequency recalibration and seed body-based awareness codes. Think of them like forced resets, but encoded with higher wisdom. Your body is just now ready to integrate. Number seven, childhood imaginary friends or dreams. Many people had contact with guides, beings, or realms early on. As kids, we often didn't question it, but these experiences were entry points. When revisited now, they may unlock multidimensional memory. Number eight, seemingly insignificant moments that keep arising. Maybe this is a specific memory that randomly pops up, but it doesn't seem important. These are often soft echoes asking to be seen through new eyes. If it keeps knocking, it likely holds a coded thread of remembering. So, maybe it wasn't a dramatic moment, maybe it was a quiet one. Maybe it wasn't a breakthrough, it was a breakdown. Maybe it wasn't anything you thought was spiritual at all, but you can feel now, looking back, that something sacred was hidden in it the whole time. So, these codes can be hidden in so many places. So, in the show notes, I'm going to link some journaling reflection prompts. And this is just to explore where light might be hiding. Along with the journal prompts, you could also meditate on this idea or just set the intention and then go out on a solo walk in nature and just spend some time in solitude. A lot of insights arise when you're just by yourself and in that great flow state. And also realize that you can and you often do experience multiple code bearing events across a lifetime. You plan activation points throughout your timeline. Some are dramatic and some are subtle. Each one is encoded with a frequency, a lesson, or a soul resonance that gets unlocked when you're ready. They don't all awaken at once, but together they form a beautiful, unfolding spiral of remembrance. Now, looking back, I see a lot of different activation points for myself. I'll go through some of them so it might help you remember some of yours. So, I've already talked about it, but the first one is my NDE. That seeded foundational mission codes and timeline divergent keys. Those came early because they were meant to quietly rewire me beneath the surface. They were meant to prepare my body and my field for everything that would come later. Then I already mentioned how at a certain point in my 20s, I just had this feeling I wasn't on the right path, and I had a feeling that I was here for a bigger purpose, but I did not know what that meant. And at the time, it felt really confusing because I kept tying it to 3D constructs of what reality looks like here under this false matrix. I was tying it to material success and the concept of a job and a career. So that's what I was exploring at first. And then it didn't come until I had my first big spiritual awakening that all of this started to make a lot more sense. But for a while, when I was soul searching about this, and I had that deep feeling that I had this bigger purpose and I wasn't aligned with it, it put me in a lot of turmoil and I felt very discontent for a while. But that was just my soul wanting to shake me up and get me on the right path again. So then I mentioned this already too, but I had a very big, profound spiritual awakening. And it truly just changed my life and completely shifted my trajectory. It completely shifted my whole perspective on life as well. But it did still slowly unfold from there. It didn't just awaken me to where I was at that time to now. This was still a slow unfolding and remembering process, but it still was a huge and intense shift for me. This was a veil lifting moment. And often these veil lifting moments and spiritual awakenings can come with emotionally charged situations like breakups and identity crises. And these often serve as rupture points, openings in the ego structure that let light flood in. During the time of my spiritual awakening, I likely retrieved truth codes, sovereignty, and I likely received truth codes, sovereignty, and reconnection to my higher self during that time. And then this was also around that time where I had a massive spiritual awakening and all of that stuff was happening in my life. But I also met a few different people who felt really familiar to me. Those people were almost certainly a soul agreement, not for partnership or long term friendship, but for activation. Those are known as light bearers, souls who cross paths with us to remind us, hey, you're not crazy, you're not alone, and you're remembering exactly on time. These kind of encounters often deliver a soul resonance ping, an emotional or energetic frequency, and a sense of, oh, okay, there's more beyond this earth construct. And even if nothing happens externally, the vibration itself seeds something in us, like comfort, hope, or multidimensional memory. You may feel home even briefly, and that knowing stays with you. So, like I said, you can have multiple events. You are a multi layered soul, and your journey is orchestrated across timelines, not just one linear path. So, one event may unlock body remembrance, another might activate heart sovereignty, another might deliver a message from a higher realm, and another might collapse an old identity and birth a new one. Each event is a frequency delivery, not a complete answer. They weave together like constellation points, and the more you awaken, the more you begin to see the pattern forming. And right now, I am definitely in a phase of conscious reconnection. I'm tracing the map that my soul laid for me, and I'm realizing that none of it was random. And now I'm retrieving what I already placed there. When this happens and you're seeing all of those connection points, those were milestone echoes. And now I'm hearing them clearly because my frequency finally matches the light that they carried. Sometimes it's not just one moment that holds the light, it's many. Different moments throughout our lives carry pieces of the code, pieces of the truth we came here to remember. A near death experience might plant one part, a breakup might open another, a fleeting meeting with someone who feels like home for no reason, that might carry a frequency we needed to feel in our body. And part of the journey is learning to listen when those moments return, to recognize that they're not coming back to be relived. They're returning because we're finally ready to receive what they were holding all along. So, if something from your past has been resurfacing lately, or you're remembering a moment that once felt insignificant or confusing, maybe it's not random. Maybe it's one of your light echoes. Maybe it's arriving now. Maybe it's arriving now because you're ready to hear what's been whispering all along. So, I've mentioned some words that I want to go deeper into and talk about what they actually mean. So the first one is light echoes. A light echo is when a part of your past self returns, not as a trigger, but as a reflection. It's not asking you to relive the past, it's asking you to receive the part of you that still shines inside. Echoes don't demand healing, they offer wholeness. They show up when your current frequency is high enough to witness the past without pain. Echoes often show up as a sudden memory, a resurfacing feeling, or a flash of who you used to be that now feels distant but sacred. Echoes are a sign that you're ready. Sometimes a memory comes back and we think, oh, why is this showing up again? I thought I already healed this. I thought I was past this. But the truth is, when something returns in a softer way, when it lands in your field not with panic but with presence, that's not regression. That's a light echo. And light echoes are a sign of embodiment, not breakdown, not failure. They show up because you're finally safe enough, stable enough, clear enough to actually receive what they were carrying. So maybe that old version of you isn't here to be fixed. She's here to be witnessed, to hand you a part of yourself you left behind. You couldn't hold the light of that moment before, but now you're ready. And that's not regression, that's growth in its highest form. Because true healing doesn't mean forgetting the past, it means becoming the version of yourself who can meet it without fear. And a light echo happens without emotional charge. That part is very, very important to remember. And when it happens without emotional charge, it's often because the light body is finally ready to receive the code. The next term is code retrieval. Code retrieval is when you finally meet the part of yourself that planted something important for you long ago. It could have been in a memory, a meeting, a feeling, but it only unlocks when the now you is ready to embody it. The past holds keys your soul tucked away for safekeeping. Code retrieval is not intellectual, it's energetic. You feel it in your body. You might not understand the code, you just know something clicked or shifted or softened. It's not about going back, it's about bringing the soul wisdom forward. The next thing is what it means to collapse linear time. When we collapse linear time, we're not living in the past or future anymore. We're meeting moments based on resonance, not order. And that means the past can show up today if it carries light. The future can visit you now if you're aligned. And healing can happen instantly because time is no longer the barrier. And your soul does not live in a line, it lives in a spiral. That's why healing, clarity, and remembering often feel nonlinear. You're not going back, you're orbiting closer to the center of your truth. This is why old moments can reappear, not to regress you, but to complete you. We're not trying to figure it all out anymore. We're learning to feel when the past is offering us light, when our memories are holding gifts, and when time itself is opening, not to pressure us, but to remind us that everything we ever needed is already inside us, waiting for us to arrive. We're taught to think healing and growth follow a timeline. First this happens, then you feel this, then you learn, then you move on. But when you start to integrate spiritually, really integrate, you realize it doesn't work that way anymore. You could receive clarity today that frees you from something that happened 10 years ago. You could have a dream that heals something you haven't consciously remembered. You could shift your frequency now, and your future rearranges instantly. Spiritual integration is not about steps, it's about your state of being. You don't heal on a timeline, you heal when your frequency rises to match what you seeded long ago. And the collapse of linear time is not chaotic, it's actually liberating. Things don't have to take years anymore. You'll know time is collapsing when your clarity arrives before the question, when the healing lands before the tears, when the truth feels familiar even if you just heard it for the first time. And there's a difference between processing the past versus integrating the soul's trajectory. We're not here to process the past forever. We're here to retrieve the wisdom that lives inside it and then move forward as the person who carries that knowing. The key difference is processing equates to retelling, revisiting, and reliving, and integration equates to receiving, embodying, letting the past dissolve into a new state of being. If you're going through something, just ask yourself, do I still need to process this? Or am I ready to receive what it taught me and move forward? Give yourself that permission to stop looping over and over again. We also can start looking at the past through the lens of celebration. Imagine if instead of looking at the past as something to fix, you looked at it as something sacred. What if that version of you wasn't wrong? She was delivering you a code. What if your past self is showing up not for shame? What if your past self is showing up now, not for shame, but for celebration? In those moments, just give yourself that affirming language. Say, wow, I've come so far. Or I remember why that happened now. This is the softest kind of healing, not the kind where you cry and collapse, but the kind where you smile at who you were and feel the light of who you are now. This portion of the episode is the alchemical key. It turns judgment into grace. It reframes time and it lets you feel free. So that's all for today. I'm going to close with a closing transmission and an affirmation. The soul doesn't forget, it hides treasure in places we think we've left behind. And one day, when the light in us matches the light we planted back then, that part of our past returns, not to pull us back, but to pull us through. So if something old is resurfacing, don't rush to fix it or frame it. Just meet it, hold it, think it, and let it hand you the light it was carrying all along. And the closing affirmation: I am not bound by time, I am a spiral of light. What returns to me is here to awaken me. I receive all that I once was, and I walk forward as all that I am. Okay, that is all. And like I mentioned, I will link journal prompts to help you remember any of these important activation moments in your life. And I will link the near death experience ritual. So if you had a near death experience, you can retrieve and activate that light. That's all I have. If you like this episode, please share with a friend and leave me a 5-star review. I love you all. Have a great week.